All right, let's do this. We're going to fire up the time machine today and set the dial way back to the 1970s. Now, this was an era of, huge political and economic change, but it was also the decade that gave us some of the most creative, sometimes bizarre, and absolutely unforgettable foods that ever hit grocery store shelves. So let's jump right into this delicious decade. I mean, seriously, look at some of this stuff. The 70s were just a wild time for packaged foods. You had brands pulling out all the stops to grab your attention, and that led to some truly memorable and, let's be honest, often very short-lived products. First up, we've got to talk about a classic category. If there was one thing the 70s pantry was never short on, it was single-serving snack cakes. This was really the golden age of that cream-filled, foil-wrapped goodness, and believe me, companies got super inventive. And a perfect example is the banana flip. You had brands like Nichols and Mickey's making these, and it wasn't just a cake, it was a banana-flavored cake that was folded in half, kind of like a taco, and then just packed with cream filling. I mean, the sheer architecture of this snack is just pure 70s genius. But, okay, if we're really talking about lost snacks, we have to mention the holy grail, Googles. They were made by Dolly Madison, but information on them is so hard to find, they've become an absolute legend. Were they yellow cakes with cinnamon frosting? Did they even really exist? They're like a culinary cryptid, and that mystery just makes the nostalgia even stronger. And all that creativity, well, it definitely spilled over into the breakfast aisle. In the 70s, the battle for your breakfast bowl was a full-blown war, and it was fought with sugar, marshmallows, and some of the most iconic mascots of all time. Just take the rivalry between Baron von Redberry and Sir Grapefellow. General Mills literally pitted these two World War I-style pilots against each other. They each had their own cereal, their own catchphrases. It was a delicious dogfight for breakfast dominance. So the real key was getting kids to beg their parents for your cereal, right? Crazy Cow had this brilliant two-part attack. First, it was basically Kick cereal but coated in a powder that turned your milk into a chocolate or strawberry treat. And then, for the knockout punch, they included collectible Star Wars trading cards you couldn't get anywhere else. It was genius. And some of these cereals have reached this incredible cult status in the most unexpected ways. Take Fruit Brute, one of the original monster-themed cereals from General Mills. It's long gone now, but it was immortalized by director Quentin Tarantino, who stuck it in 2 of his classic films, a true cinematic breakfast icon. But hey, it wasn't all sugar and cartoon characters. Oh no. The 70s also gave us some incredibly bold experiments in the world of savory snacks and meal helpers. So get ready for some interesting flavors. Have you ever looked at a jar of peanut butter and thought, this is great, but what if it tasted like bananas? Well, somebody at Kraft did. Kugel was their line of flavored peanut spreads. You could get chocolate, vanilla, cinnamon, or, yes, banana-flavored Kugel to smear on your sandwiches. A truly unique product of its time, for sure. And, oh my gosh, who could forget this jingle? This little earworm introduced the whole world to Tuna Twist, a product that was designed to completely change your boring old tuna salad sandwich. The commercial was super catchy, but the concept behind it was even more interesting. See, Tuna Twist wasn't just seasoning, it was marketed as a meal extender. In an era where budgets were pretty tight, this idea that one little packet could stretch 4 sandwiches worth of tuna into 6, well, that was a huge selling point for families trying to make their groceries go a little further. But there was a catch. And yeah, it was a pretty big one. That meal extender was a textured vegetable protein, basically a soy-based filler, that had the very unfortunate side effect of making people ill. So, not surprisingly, Tuna Twist got pulled from the shelves pretty quickly. It became kind of a cautionary tale in food innovation. And speaking of short-lived legends, let's just have a moment of silence for pizza spins. They were only around from about 1968 to 1975, but these little pinwheel-shaped chips that tasted like pizza became an absolute cult classic. People who remember them really remember them. And all this really brings us to a much broader theme of the 70s kitchen, convenience. As family dynamics started to change, so did the way people made dinner, and that led to the rise of the instant meal. Now, the TV dinner wasn't exactly new, but it became an absolute staple in the 70s. With more dual-income households, there was just less time for cooking big meals. So Swanson provided the perfect solution, a whole meal in a little compartmentalized aluminum tray. All you had to do was pop it in the oven and wait. And wait, you did. 45 minutes. Can you believe that? In an era before microwaves were in every house, that was the price of convenience. It's almost unthinkable today when we all get impatient after like 2 minutes. And this quote just perfectly sums up the experience. The biggest danger was a breach in that little aluminum wall. If your peas ended up in your cherry dessert, or even worse, your green beans somehow baked into your brownie, well, dinner was officially ruined. It was like a high-stakes game of culinary Jenga.
Okay, for our final section, let's do a quick tour through some of the other legendary candies and drinks that really defined the sweet side of the 70s.
You know, some candy bars were built entirely on a gimmick. The Marathon bar's whole identity was its size. It was a whopping 8 inches of braided caramel covered in chocolate. The wrapper even had a ruler printed right on it, and its slogan basically dared you to finish it fast. What a story this is. Baseball legend Reggie Jackson basically spoke his own candy bar into existence. Then, at the 1978 Yankees home opener, they handed out the new Reggie bars to all the fans. What does he do? He hits a home run, and the fans just showered the field with candy bars to celebrate. An absolutely legendary launch for a bar that sadly was gone just 3 years later. And finally, just a quick shout out to Aspen Soda. In a world full of colas and lemon lime drinks, PepsiCo just rolled the dice on a clear, apple-flavored soda. It was crisp, it was different, and it was gone in just 4 years. But it definitely paved the way for other apple drinks that came later. You know, when you look back, these foods are so much more than just, stuff to eat. They're like little time capsules. Every one of them tells a story about the 1970s, its creativity, its focus on convenience, and its complete willingness to try something new, even if it didn't work out. Which kind of makes you wonder, if you could resurrect one lost food from any era, what would it be? Thanks for tuning in.